It wouldn't be a normal college football season without controversy. Seems like every year that word is synonymous with the end of the year spectaculars. We just witnessed the very first official ranking, well, official, the of the 12 team format. This is set in stone who's making the college football playoff. And of course, fireworks were lit off on Twitter, wherever you're at on social media. Everyone was talking about it. But let's not forget the conference championship games that took place as well the day before. We're going to talk about all that and get our instant reactions. I'm your host, Matthew Reardon, and this is Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Total Sports Talk Beyond the Lights, where I'm your host, Matthew Reardon, and with me today is none other than Ed Smith.
Hook 'em, y'all.
Well, the results are in. Conference championships are officially over, and the rankings are officially out. And there's just so much to talk about because, like I said earlier, controversy seems to always surround when these rankings come out, and there's always a team that feels like they were left out. They're pissed off, and we're going to talk just about that. But first, let's talk about these conference championship games that took place, because some of these games kind of set the ground on how this was really going to go, because there were some teams that were on the bubble looking out that were hoping that there were some teams that were going to lose. They had a chance to go in, and well, some of them played spoiler. The first game that took place that we're going to talk about is the UNLV Rebels at the Boise State Broncos for the Mountain West Conference Championship, and it was the Ashton Jeanty show. What's new? That's what he's done every single game this year. He is a Heisman finalist. I know they haven't announced it, but he'll be a finalist for sure. And he has a chance to win the Heisman. I mean, if I were a person that's given a vote, it would be him. But this was just like every Boise State game. Ashton Jeanty did his thing. They actually looked more balanced as well, especially with the passing game. I was impressed with that. But Ed, it didn't even seem like UNLV really had a chance in this game.
The physicality of Boise State in this game was well beyond what UNLV could put up with. It was wet, it was cold, it was on the blue turf because the Mountain West Championship is a home game for the number one seed. So it was in Boise. And these guys from Las Vegas, they don't see weather like that very much. So they I'm not going to say that they couldn't prepare for it or the weather, the elements were too much, but it was the Boise State offensive line that was way too much for the UNLV Rebels. The defense was playing lights out through 2.5 quarters, and the the only touchdown that UNLV actually got was kind of garbage. Because it was their will had already been taken by that point. It was just, okay, this is what's going to happen. This is the end of the game. And it really set the tone for that when UNLV, they went to do a field goal. It was, mind you, it was a long field goal. It was 56 yards in that cold, dense air and bounced off the crossbar back into the field of play. It just kind of deflated that team, and it was just pretty much done from there.
Yeah, I mean, if they had those Tom Brady deflated balls in the cold, maybe would have been a little different. But yeah, it really did deflate their morale once he missed that field goal, because it just shifted in Boise State's favor. And when you're in front of your home crowd, that's what you need. You need that momentum shifting to you, and you're going to run with it. And that's exactly what they did. hand the ball to Ashton Genty, and he clearly ran with it. So he put up video game like numbers. He's doing that every week. Boise State, they punched their ticket to the college football playoff. We'll talk about that, but this win here pretty much almost certain that, and they knew that. The next game, it's almost like a deja vu, similar, because this is the Iowa State Cyclones taking on the Arizona State Sun Devils, and much like the game before, this is the Cam Skattebo show. This guy, man, he's a freak. I mean, I'm pretty sure, Ed, you texted me or someone texted me yesterday saying he is a freak, because he really is. He even caught a ball for a touchdown out the backfield. He's doing just about everything for this Arizona State Sun Devil teams. But Ed, we really need to talk about this. Arizona State in a new conference, they were predicted to finish last. Where do they finish, Ed?
Champions.
I mean, it really doesn't get any better than that. You proved all the naysayers wrong. And this wasn't just they just skimmed by. They won 45-19, and Iowa State, they also got a garbage like touchdown too. So this game was way out of hand, and it was all Arizona State.
Iowa State basically imploded in the third quarter because going into halftime, this was a tight ball game. It was that third quarter in which Iowa State had 3 turnovers that turned into touchdowns, and game was over by that point. It was boom, 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 and done. Skattebo, he he is the identity and the heart of that offense. He's their leading receiver. He's their leading rusher. He's everything to that team, and he is certainly able to shoulder that load. And what I did text you, Matthew, is he's a combination of Toby Gerhart when he was at Stanford and Cal Raleigh at who is the catcher for the Seattle Mariners, whose nickname is the Big Dumper, uh, because he is so built from the waist down and his contact balance is so good. There was just no getting this dude on the ground.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's got that low center of gravity that it's almost impossible to even attempt to take him down. He's like a bowling ball in there. So it's very fun to watch. And what's also fun to watch is their head coach. It's like Kenny Dillingham has to be the perfect coach for this. And that's one thing I'm going to look at come college football playoff is the coaching matchups. And he reminds me of like a Dan Lanning, and obviously he did coach up in Eugene as offensive coordinator for the Ducks. But Kenny Dillingham, he's having a great time down there, and he's doing all the right things for Arizona State. So really, hats off to that program and Kenny Dillingham for what they've done this year. Predicted to be last, and here they are. Almost said Pac-12, but Big 12 champions. So good job, Arizona State. You also punched your ticket as well with the automatic bid. The next game, this was a really big game in the SEC, as it was the Georgia Bulldogs and the Texas Longhorns. The inaugural year for the Texas Longhorns in the SEC, they made it to the championship game, and unfortunately they fell short. And Ed, I'm obviously going to let you kind of take this one and maybe explain what went wrong, but also what went right for the Longhorns.
What went wrong for the Longhorns is giving the officiating crew enough leeway to call penalties on them in the first half, which one of them cost us 3 points that would have negated the need for an overtime because we would have won by 3. The other one caused a miss, yeah, from another miscue where we took a sack when we didn't need to, caused another miss. So that's 6 points that were taken off the board. It was really a game for the Longhorn side where they just could not capitalize on the pure domination they had in the first half. They go into the half up only 6-3. That just leaves the door open for a Georgia team that's been there and the experience of being there. Never never mind the fact that Carson Beck was knocked out of the game and the last play of the first half on what just looked like a terrible arm injury, uh, trying to trying to rear back for a Hail Mary. Well, into the second half, that spark of having a backup that is capable of doing it, Georgia took advantage of that and drove down the field, which is not something that they had been able to do against this Texas defense in the two games that they had played. So that momentum that they picked up from there, it was game on at that point. So just back and forth the rest of the way. And gosh darn, we get to overtime, and here we go again. We're doing well, and we wind up settling for a field goal. Georgia Tech, Georgia Bulldogs, they get in there. We get a big but fair, I will say fair hit on uh, the Georgia quarterback, and he goes out of the game for a play. And the next play, they score a touchdown and win 22-19, which, if I remember correctly, I think I predicted a score of 23-19, but it was reversed.
Yes, and Texas' favorite. It's like we knew that this was going to be one of those type of games where it was not going to be high scoring. It was going to be very close, and this was the epitome of that. It went to overtime, and it was indeed close as it was a 3-point game. But uh, there's one play that is still stuck in my mind. I'm not even a Texas fan, and that was the interception towards the end. And even Kirk Herbstreit, the announcer, was talking about it, that this was one that probably could have been ran back for a
Yep.
touchdown, which probably could have won and sealed the game for Texas.
Yes.
So I know it's all the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, and they'll probably be sure to look back at it, but it's on to the next game. Texas, they were in a great position because they had a great year that they knew that if they lost, they would still make the playoffs. So, but you still want to win. You always play to win. You never play to lose. But for them, they do have that cushion, and it's on to the next. So they hope that maybe they can meet Georgia for the third time, and third time's the charm. So it was it
No,
was.
I don't want to meet them again. Stop
Hey,
it.
third time's the charm, Ed. You got to beat
Stop
them
it.
this time. But it was still an entertaining game, especially in any game that goes into overtime. So uh, Georgia pulled it off. They won the SEC, and they aren't going to have a repeat of what happened last year. Uh, the next game that took place was Penn State and my Oregon Ducks. Gosh, this was all offense, no defense type of game. And both these teams are top 10 in defense in all college football. It didn't look like it at all yesterday as Oregon came out striking. Penn State did as well. Uh, it was one of those games that who was going to make a mistake first on offense, because maybe that could possibly seal the game for the other team. But it was just back and forth, back and forth. And I said it yesterday. I know that Oregon, even though they won, James Franklin still did a tremendous job in this game, because as a Duck fan, there were times where I'm like, Penn State's going to come back from this, and they sure looked like they were going to. And even towards the end, they sure looked like they were going to as well. And Drew Aller threw the game-sealing interception. I was proud of my Oregon Ducks for what they were able to do. They did a lot of things right on offense, but defense, you can't be playing like this come playoff times, because there's going to be teams that are going to exploit you, especially if you don't have the same type of offensive game that they did in this matchup. So, hats off to Dan Lanning, Dylan Gabriel, the whole offensive staff there. But the defense, they did make a stop when it mattered most with that game-sealing interception. Oregon Ducks are now undefeated, 13-0, and they will be the number one seed in the college football playoff. So great year for the Oregon Ducks. But we still have more to go. And Ed could agree with his Longhorns. There's still a whole lot of college playoff to go with 12 teams now. And we'll get to that. We just got one more game to go, and that is the Clemson Tigers and the SMU Mustangs for the ACC championship game. And Ed, this was the epitome of two halves because this was all Clemson the first half.
Yep.
It looked as if SMU did not belong there. Alabama was licking their chops somewhat because if SMU got blown out, there's a chance they may not make it. But at the same time, a team like Alabama wants SMU to win because Clemson's ranked behind Alabama, and if SMU wins, that leaves the door open for Alabama to come right in. But this was, like I said, the tale of two halves. And what happened, Ed? SMU came storming back in the second half.
Yeah, and SMU was down 17 points going into the fourth quarter, and they tied the game with 13 seconds left. Where have we heard that before? Patrick Mahomes, maybe.
Yeah.
So this was a down to the wire type situation, and kickoff. This is why special teams is so important. This is why you have this practice every week when you are getting ready for a game. What is the end of game gonna look like? Clemson was able to get a monster return out to about the 40. They have about 17-yard. Was that about a 17-yard
Yeah.
catch and set up for a 56-yard field goal? Clemson takes home the trophy, and in my opinion, this was the absolute worst case scenario for Alabama. Whether it be Clemson blowing out SMU or SMU blowing out Clemson, there would be no discussion about having both of those teams in the playoff. The way that this game ended, that's where social media just melted down about what's going to happen, how's it going to play out, how's it going to do this for 12 hours before the selection committee actually announced anything. And here we are the day after. It's still melting down over the reaction of what the committee did. So as a game, this was a game that was certainly worth keeping an eye on, but it was so easy to want to turn the channel. And those that didn't were treated to a fantastic end of game that really showed the moxie of this up and coming SMU team.
Yeah, I was in such an interesting predicament because my Oregon Ducks game just ended, but I wanted to watch the trophy celebration, but I knew that it was coming down to the end on the SMU Clemson game, so I put the game on my phone. So I got the game on my phone, and then I got the Oregon trophy ceremony going on, and then I see this 56-yard kick to win it, and I'm just like, this is college football for you. And you can only imagine if that kicker kicks a touchback, this game's probably going to overtime because with 13 seconds left, I mean, they may try one play, but that momentum that they got from that kickoff return really set things up for Clemson, and that's what helped them win this game. But like I said, all the shoulda, coulda, wouldas that could have happened, but Clemson, even with giving up that big lead, they still found a way to win it in the end, and they got the automatic bid by winning their conference championship. SMU, on the other hand, we're going to talk more about them, but what a great first year for them in the ACC. They really did a lot. They had a lot of strides going into their first year there, so caps off to them. But now the time that we've been waiting for here, and that is the rankings, the official final college football playoff rankings with the bracket, which we'll talk about. Let's go with the rankings first. I guess we'll just do 25. We'll go down. Coming in at 25, we got Memphis, at 24, UNLV. Colorado finished at 23, Army at 22, Syracuse at 21. That's a great ranking for Syracuse, especially with that upset over Miami. They got a lot of signings on this early signing period too, so that's a name to keep an eye out on. Illinois at 20, Missouri at 19, Iowa State at 18, BYU at 17, and Clemson at 16, even with the conference championship. South Carolina at 15, Ole Miss at 14, Miami at 13, and then Arizona State at 12, Alabama at 11. And you're starting to think, wow, Alabama made it. Well, let's talk more. SMU at 10, Boise State at 9, Indiana at 8, Tennessee at 7, and Ohio State at 6. And the final 5 in college football playoff rankings are Notre Dame at 5, Penn State at 4, Texas at 3, Georgia at 2, and the Oregon Ducks at number 1. But this is where things get kind of shaken up, Ed, because of the new bracket, the new rules with the 12-team format. Just because you're in the top 12 does not mean that you made it. And yes, if you don't know already, Alabama, even though they came in at number 11, Alabama did not make the college football playoff. And I think the committee got that right. I really do. I think the committee actually got all this right. I know the brackets got its own drama, but as far as the 12 teams that are in this bracket, I agree 100%. We got Oregon as the number 1 overall seed. So forget the seeds that I just told you as the rankings. These are the bracket seeds. Oregon is the number 1 overall seed. Georgia number 2. Boise State number 3. And Arizona State number 4. Those are the 4 teams that get the first round bye, and they automatically are in the quarterfinals. The number 5 seed Texas will be taking on the number 12 seed Clemson Tigers. Be a home game for Texas, and Clemson's going to have to go down to Austin. It's not going to be a fun ride for them. And then you got the number 6 seed Penn State Nittany Lions against the number 11 SMU Mustangs. So Penn State, close game with the number 1 team in the country, SMU. Although they lost, they did make it, so they did take that spot from Alabama. The number 7 seed Notre Dame Fighting Irish will be taking on the number 10 Indiana Hoosiers. This is a fun game because it's an in-state battle. It's an in-state rivalry pretty much with Indiana and Notre Dame. I was really hoping that maybe like a SEC team would face off against like Notre Dame because there's a big chance for snow come this game. So that would have been fun to watch. The number 8 seed Ohio State Buckeyes will be facing off against the number 9 seed Tennessee Volunteers. So, Ed, your instant thoughts and reactions here.
My instant thought is that Clemson game coming to Austin, that's also a welcome home game for Cade Klubnik.
Yes.
So he's definitely going to want to show out here in town for the hometown team that he grew up with. When it comes to SMU, it's almost like, poor guys, they went from either not being able to play at home to having to play at Penn State. And that's just the way that losing that game felt for them.
Yeah.
Because it's 5, 6, 7, 8 that get a home game in this format. So Penn State, they were screwed either way. There was no way to celebrate their success this season with the home game. So that's kind of where they sit with that. Like you, I was thinking Notre Dame should be playing somebody from the South because this whole South to North conversation is one of the interesting dynamics that we can have with this bracket. But this is how it kind of fell, where we have 4 Big Ten teams and one, we can call them independent all we want. To me, they're still an ACC team. So that was my initial thought. I thought it was interesting putting Boise State over Arizona State because Arizona State, being a Power Four school, I would think would get the benefit of the doubt over the G5
Yeah.
as the top four conference champions. So I thought that's an interesting way to go about that because, quite honestly, I think it would have been very interesting to see Texas go to Boise State should they beat Clemson.
Yeah.
That would be very interesting. However, when you take a look at where these quarterfinal games are being played, the committee really took that into account as well. So I see why they did it. The number 3 seed, they're playing in the Tostitos Fiesta Bowl, or whoever is being sponsored by them now.
Yeah.
Um, Verbo, I think. They're being played in the Fiesta Bowl, which is like 10 minutes away from the Arizona State campus.
Yeah.
So I I applaud the committee for doing that, not making it so uh, obvious that it is a home game for uh, whoever got the bye uh, is playing.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, the committee's really shown their hand with the whole Boise State situation because of them being a group of five instead of a power five, power four conference. But I think maybe it was with Arizona State being further back in the rankings to start that maybe that's why they didn't have them leapfrog. If SMU would have won, they would have leapfrogged Boise State and would have probably been the number 3 seed versus the number 4 seed. So, but yeah, I'm glad that Arizona State isn't really getting that home game. But there are some that are, I mean, SMU essentially is traveling from the South. They're going up to Penn State. Tennessee, although it's only like a 5.5, 6 hour drive from Neyland up to Columbus, that there's a chance that it may snow that game in Columbus too. So some of those teams will be out of their element if snow does arise. So that's something to keep an eye out on. I would love to see that. I really would because it like the Miami Dolphins effect. When they go to the cold,
Yep.
they don't know how to play. So obviously Tennessee, SMU are definitely hoping that there's not snow in the forecast, but it is going to almost be guaranteed that it will be cold on those campuses regardless of snow or not.
Mm-hmm.
So some fun matchups here, and you're going to have Dabo Sweeney versus Sarkisian. That's a great matchup right there. We're going to see how Josh Heupel does, against Ohio State in the shoe. Let's see how he does with his Volunteers. So I love it all. I think that the committee did get it right. Some people may argue with the matchups in the bracket, but you got to play well and you will get that either first round bye or you will get that first round home game. So Texas, they worked their butts off. They got that home game. Penn State was very impressive as well. Notre Dame, Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame, they really have looked great this year after coming off that loss against NIU. So definitely have to give them their flowers with their season. So I guess what we really need to talk about now is the drama that is surrounding some of the metrics that get these teams in, or maybe it's not good enough. And what does the committee value? Is it strength of schedule? Is it quality wins? Or is it quality losses? Because if you look at the team that was the first out, that was Alabama. Alabama did have some wins against number 2 Georgia. They had some South Carolina. They had some impressive wins or wins against some high quality teams. But you look at their losses. Vanderbilt. I know that was on the road, but Vanderbilt pretty much controlled that game. And then the most embarrassing loss was against Oklahoma, where they only scored 3 points, not a single touchdown. So did the committee look at that and valued, well, that loss was more embarrassing, whereas SMU, which is the team that did sneak in, uh, they made it to their conference championship, although they didn't have maybe the quality of wins and their strength of schedule and strength of record did not match against Alabama. So, Ed, what are you seeing that the committee's doing here for their values?
Well, I think the committee is valuing getting to your conference championship game. Here, Alabama was sitting, they were sitting at home watching the SEC championship game.
Mhm.
You can guarantee if they were playing in the SEC championship game, they would be in and nobody would have a question about it.
Yeah.
Well, here they were sitting at home just kind of waiting around for somebody else to fall off so they could get in. And this is where what happened with Alabama last year, I think, comes to bite them in the ass because that was their mulligan. That
Yeah.
was their, you know, we know you're a really good football team, but there is a team that is schedule wise better than you. Is there any reason why we should put you in over them? And they did that. They put Alabama in over Florida State because of the loss of quarterback uh, of Jordan Travis uh, on Florida State's team. So then Alabama gets in. Well, you can't have a mulligan every year and not expect there to be some backlash against this committee as a whole for just putting Alabama in because they're Alabama. That is a terrible look for fair play amongst the teams that should be there. I've been on record as saying if they put Alabama in, it's nothing but a money grab and not about what's best for the sport. Well, here we are. They put what's best for the sport in, and of course, you have the entirety of the Alabama fan base just melting down and turning into puddles of goo on social media because they weren't selected above an SMU team that played in its conference championship, went 11-1 during the regular season, and their one loss was against a BYU team that it's still ranked. So not two losses against two 6-6 teams that have no business being in this discussion whatsoever.
Yeah, my favorite thing that I saw online is it Greg Burns? Is that Alabama's athletic director? I'm trying to think who their athletic director is there, but um, he made a post online, and with Twitter they got the community notes now, and he was trying to make his case for Alabama strength of schedule, and the community notes decided to kind of go in there and let him know, remind him of the loss they had against a 6-6 Oklahoma team. So. Uh,
Yep.
Maybe that's what the committee's looking at, but I think it's of note that one, no matter what you expand to, there's always going to be the team that's pissed off because they were let out. You
Mm-hmm.
will never be able to escape that. Two, we have yet to really figure out for sure how the committee is officially looking at these things, because it seems like every year it does leave us with our heads scratching because, well, what are they really looking at the most, and is it consistent? So I think that's something of note, is how is the committee officially looking at these things. So but like I said, if I were in the committee, this is who I would choose as well. I find
Mm-hmm.
no issue with the 12 teams that made it. I mean, and here's the thing about it is Arizona State, you look at them, they're not a big market team, but I'll tell you what, and Ed, for your sake, I hope this doesn't happen, but let's say Texas beats Clemson. Cam Scadaboo could have the game of his life, which he seems to be having a lot lately, and upset Texas. Okay, so there's a reason why Arizona State's there, all right? And they may not be this big market team, but they could surprise people and shock the world. So this is what it's all about. It's a 12-team playoff. They may not be the 12, let's say, best, but with how the format is, they earned their way in there. So I can't knock that. Arizona State earned it. Boise State earned it as well. So
Yeah.
that's how I look at it.
I will make one point. There has been a lot of talk of using the BCS format to help the committee select these teams or even replace the committee. One of the problems with the BCS program when it was active was it was trying to get everything down to one matchup between two teams. And that was way too narrow a window for that type of program to take over. Here we are with 12 teams in this playoff format. I think that could be revisited and, if not help, but replace this committee, because we don't know what their criteria is. You have 12 people with 12 sets of eyes, 12 different backgrounds, and 12 ways of valuing different things. So that this BCS argument, I think, does have some water to it, but here's the caveat. If they had used the BCS format for this playoff, Alabama would have been over SMU. So that is the reason why the BCS is not a thing right now, because it looked at these numerical metrics over eye test, and that's what everybody wanted to have be re-implemented by getting rid of the BCS. So there's not going to be a perfect scenario, but I think we can get closer year after year after year, because as we've talked about, this is the first year of this expanded 12 team, which we'll probably see expand again to 16 in very short order. But using those two different ways of trying to put this together, I think would be a tremendous improvement over what we're seeing in this first year.
Yep. Yeah. Now there will be tweaks to be made for sure. Really quick, before we go, not trying to change the subject, but breaking news: the New York Mets just signed Juan Soto to a massive 15-year deal. So just got that alert on my phone. So we'll be talking about that as more details come out. But biggest contract in MLB history has just taken place as Juan Soto. Doesn't look like it's that far of a move with going from the Yankees to the Mets. So just wanted to note that really quick. But college football playoff, this is something that we're going to be talking about for a while now, as this isn't your simple 4-team playoff. This is 12 teams. So the first games will be taking place here in a couple weeks. So we're going to break down those matchups as they come and also give our predictions. But that's about all we have today, folks. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Please be sure to hit that like and subscribe button, share these videos, and let us know your thoughts on the teams that made this college football playoffs. If you agree, and if you disagree, let us know why you disagree and who you think should have been there instead, because we're all entitled to our opinions. So I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. But until next time, guys, we are rounding third and we are headed for home.